Hey, Dan here, and I want to personally welcome you and say thank you. I'm so excited that you've requested this video. I know that you're going to gain some valuable insights today. So let's jump right in. If you're an entrepreneur, you're a coach or consultant, and you're working to build an online business, you're likely asking, how can I book more clients and grow my income without feeling pushy or frustrated? That's the question so many of us start with. And it often leads to a whirlwind of programs, online trainings and courses, and books that all promise answers, but they leave you feeling more confused, more frustrated, and probably a little bit defeated. Let's take a moment, real quick, to define first what I mean when I say online business. I'm really talking about coaches, consultants, or other creators who want to build a location independent profitable business that allows them to do the work they love from just about anywhere. The, if you're like many, you've tried everything, or at least it feels that way, right? The frustrations can get overwhelming. It's tempting to think things like, maybe I'm just not cut out for this. But here's the truth, most of the advice out there doesn't address the root of the challenges that you're facing. There are two key issues that I think tend to trip people up. The first key issue is the question of the niche or the niche, depending on how you choose to say it. How many times have you heard riches are in the niches, or you need to define your niche to be successful? If you're anything like me or like I was, this advice did not sit well. For years, it felt frustrating to me to the point it almost brought me to tears in many cases because coach after mentor would offer this advice and say, this is the thing you need to do. And it just never sat well with me. Now, if you have already chosen your niche or it was easy for you, then this part may not be your frustration, and that's okay. But there are plenty of people out there I know that feel the way that I did. And honestly, if you've ever listened to my podcast, I don't know that the niche is the first thing that anyone should be focused on developing. So we can talk about that at another time. And I'd invite you to have a discussion with me around this topic. Like, anyway, so I was frustrated to the point of almost to tears because I could never pin down that perfect niche and I felt like I was failing. Then everything changed. One of my coaches helped me to discover an alternate perspective. He introduced me to a piece of gold that was shared by Steve Chandler, who is another wonderful coach and runs the Coaching Prosperity School. He introduced me to this, and it completely shifted my mindset about the whole niche conversation. Instead of being stressed or focused on finding the perfect niche, I instead learned to focus on what was most important and what I love to do and the value that I bring to other people. This freed me from so much fear. It removed the self doubt around this topic and it allowed me to truly show up more fully in my work. And I want to share that little tidbit with you here. So let me pull that up really quickly. I'm going to read this to you. This is what Steve Chandler wrote. Most coaching certification programs urge novice coaches to find and choose a niche or a specialty. I've never encountered such counterproductive nonsense. Most of the coaches I know who are extremely successful have no niche at all. A niche would actually limit them. It would shut them off from many categories of people who are yearning for their help. I know coaches who emerge from certification programs crowing about the niche that they serve, yet they have no paid clients. They have a niche. Let's see. The only time I see a niche working in a coach's favor is when it emerges on its own. If you have a certain success in a certain category, and it can happen by accident, you can now go to other people who are interested in that category. And they are more likely to listen to your success stories. But even then, you don't have to let it restrict you. Now, I get it. There are a lot of people out there who probably just said, well, if you can't serve everyone. And I agree. I think you should serve one person at a time. Again, if you'd like to discuss this particular topic further, I invite you to reach out. Let's continue that conversation. In the meantime, let's move on here. The second key issue is our mindset around sales. Maybe you've thought sales feels pushy, or it's I'm not good at sales, or selling makes me uncomfortable. These feelings come from bad past experiences, being sold to, random social media messages, aggressive advertising, or pushy tactics that leave a bad taste in our mouth. I get them all the time. I see them all the time. And I've learned to just smile and nod. But what if I told you that sales isn't about convincing anyone of anything? It's about serving. When you shift your mindset from a place of needing to sell things to focused on serving other people, everything changes. This is the framework for success. These two challenges, the niche and the sales conversation, are often the root of what's holding you back. And the solution is much simpler than you think. It's about creating genuine relationships and connecting with people. As you might have heard me say before, and I have often said in the past, relationships, I believe, are the currency of the future. So, how do you turn your relationships into paying clients? That's the next question. This is where the Prosperous Coach Approach comes in. This is a method that's described by Steve Chandler and Rich Litvin in their book, The Prosperous Coach. I absolutely encourage you to read it. Maybe you've heard some people talk about it before. I've heard other coaches reference it as their Bible for coaching. And it's one of several that I keep on hand. It's sitting right here on my shelf. So, uh, back on track here. It's based on four simple steps: connect, invite, create, and propose. I want to break them down with you here and sort of talk a little bit about how I've adopted them and incorporated them into my coaching. Step one, connect. People love to talk about themselves. Use this to your advantage by being genuinely curious about them. Focus on learning anything you can about that person. What do they do? What lights them up? What challenges are they facing? Here's the key: eliminate any attachment to any sort of outcome, such as, I need to create this person as a client, or I want this person to be my next client, or I would love them to be my next client. The only focus here is on the connection and relationship building. If you eliminate all the other attachments to possible outcomes beyond connecting with them, it makes it much easier to be present in the moment and focused on learning about the person and being genuinely curious about that person in front of you, whether it's over a Zoom call, over a telephone call, or in person. Your goal at this stage isn't to pitch anything at all. It's simply to build the relationship. Step two, invite. When and if someone shares a challenge that catches your attention with you, then it's okay to extend an invitation. There are a couple ways to approach this, and I'll come back to it in a moment. But you can say something like, I heard you mention X. I'm not sure if I'm able to help. I am a coach. It's what I do for a living. And I'd love to sit down and explore this together. Would you be open to that? It eliminates risk for that person and allows them to experience your coaching without any pressure. Now, I said I'm going to come back. So here we go. I have experienced this in a first conversation with many people. And the key here is not to get overly excited and jump straight into trying to sell them on anything, first of all, or on the idea of working with you. Remember, there's no attachment to that outcome yet. But to genuinely be curious about whether or not they want to brainstorm this or they want to work through this by talking to someone who might be beneficial to talk to. You might be able to add value. You don't know yet if you can add value to that conversation. And I'd be honest about that. Hey, I don't know if I'm able to add any value to this particular conversation, but I'd love to sit down and talk about that with you if you'd be open to it. Now, there's a couple approaches, like I said, you can open it up when the time is right in that conversation. Or maybe you could wait a day or two, or a week, or a month, and reach back out to that person. And when you reconnect with them, that might be a good time to open the door. That's sort of something that you'll want to play with and you'll want to practice with and see what works well for you, what feels right for you in each of those instances. And, you know, if you wait a day or two and you reach back out to them, maybe you send them an email or you call them, or maybe you run into them again and say, hey, the other day when we were talking, I was really interested in your work and the things that you shared with me, but you did also mention this challenge. I wonder if that'd be something you'd like to explore together. I'm a coach and it's what I do for a living. I don't know if I have the answers or the solutions that might be beneficial to you, but I'd love to find out. How would you be open to that? Those are a couple examples that I hope were helpful in that stage. The next stage is, or the next step rather, is to create. This is not creating a client. This is more about creating an experience for a potential client. Because if they've sat down with you, they've agreed to a session with you, there is potential that this person could become a client in the future. Still no attachment to that in this phase of the game. But so during this session, this probably initial session with a client, and every other session after that, your focus should be on creating a transformational experience for that person, helping them to gain new insights and decide what actionable steps that they're going to take as a result of these new insights. And whether or not they decide to work with you any further from here, they'll leave this session feeling supported and inspired. A transformational experience working with you is something that they're likely not to forget anytime soon, maybe ever. And that's the key. You want to create a tremendous experience for them. Step number 4, propose. Now, I would suggest continuing with the no attachment clause that I added earlier, because if you're attached to any specific outcome, the chances are your client can feel that. Chances are that you may be overly excited or overly nervous about making this proposal. And there's some keys to practicing as far as being able to name your price without question, with some authority, still with passion about what you do and passion about the person in front of you, but with some confidence that indicates you're not hesitating to name what it is or what it takes to work with you. So, what does this look like? If the session goes well, you may decide to make a proposal and continue working together with this person, or offer them the opportunity to continue to work with you. I rarely make a proposal in a first session. Instead, I like to offer a second session. I want to see a couple things. I want to see that they're committed and ready to take intentional action. And the time between the first and the second session is going to help me to see, did they take the action that they said they were committed to taking? Did challenges come up that interfered with that? There's nothing wrong with that. That's something that we can work through. But if they didn't even make an attempt, that's likely not someone that I'm going to make a proposal to, because that's not a great fit for what I want in my business and the people that most excite me about working together. So I rarely make that proposal in a first session. When I do make the proposal, I reserve usually the final 15 or 20 minutes of that session to discuss what a coaching relationship would look like with me. And I frame it something like this. We have about 15 minutes or so left in this conversation or in our time together today. And based on what we discussed in our first session and what we discussed here today, I would like to check in with you for a moment. Would it make sense to pause here and talk about how we could continue working together in a paid coaching relationship? Either way is fine. If the answer is no, we can move right along and address any other concerns or challenges before we move into wrapping up our time today. This keeps the process natural. It eliminates risk and it keeps it focused on serving the person in front of you. So, building a thriving coaching business isn't about chasing clients or perfecting your pitch or marketing or any of those other things that we often talk about. It's truly about creating genuine connection, serving others, and allowing your expertise to shine. If you're ready to start creating meaningful relationships and building a business that you love, I'd love to connect with you. Reach out to me, Dan at danw.us, for a no strings coaching session. No obligations, no expectations that you'll ever become a paying client. And I'd love the opportunity to explore what's possible for you. Thank you so much for requesting this video. I'd love any feedback that you have. What insights did you take away? What stood out to you today? If you'd like to share those with me, again, my email address is dan@danw.us, and I'd love to hear from you.